So hi, Peter. Thank you again for agreeing to do this introduction with me today. So hi everyone, I'm Jodie Holden. As you know, I've been putting loads of videos out of late. And this is Peter Wilson, who is one of our speakers at the Health Freedom Revolution Summit. Peter, you're speaking on the Saturday, that's right? Yeah, you've
It
got
is, yeah.
on the Saturday. That's fantastic. And that's because what we've done is compartmentalize the summit into the Saturday is very much about the rights, the health freedom rights, and also all of the factors that affect us health when we're under a lot of stress. So certainly from your background, what you help people with is financial stress, debt, legal lawful sort of issues where, you know, they're possibly getting harassed by certain systems, that you can provide them with knowledge and information and signpost tools that give them a really strong foundation of how they can stand in sovereignty and how they can, you know, really just unravel themselves from a lot of that drama. Would you say that's a fair description?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, I really studied like contract law and contracts themselves and agreements, compare the two together, an agreement and a contract. Not many people will know the difference between them. Now, when you've actually signed on to a lot of these agreements, which are agreements for what you would class as debts, they're absolutely not a contract, and you're not tied to them whatsoever either. Now, we were just talking about before, you know, about January itself, how it can be like a bad time for a lot of people coming out from like the holiday season, where they've kind of accidentally put themselves under a lot of pressure, financial pressure. And it comes to the end of January, which is like infamous, I think is probably the best way of saying it, for a lot of depression that can lead to like bad stuff like suicide and things like that, because people are really starting to feel that financial pressure burdening from the December payments, and now it's all due. The late end of like January, it's like very renowned for that type of thing, because that's when the bills are hitting, the credit card bills, the direct debit payments from all of the loans that they've had. So what we try to do is educate people on the fact of, look, do you really think that that is a debt? Do you really owe that money? And what actually is money anyway? Because I don't want to get too complicated and put everybody off, but you know, at the end of the day, right, the governments have done a lot of things to what you would class as money, and it is not money whatsoever. It's actually what we would class as currency. So if you imagine literally like a river, so you've got the banks of the river going down, which is the banks, and that's, everyone knows what the banks are. They go to the banks for their currency, and then it goes into the river, and the banks make sure it flows in the right direction, but always going away from you. But it's not real money, because the money was actually taken away from us many, many years ago, when they got rid of any gold or silver tie-in with what this is called a fiat currency. It's all fake. Now, you have to look at that. I don't want to get too complicated on a short chat, but you can look at contracts and realize, and agreements, and realize that you're not tied into this currency, and that you don't owe anything anyway. And we can show people the proof to them of how this debt was created. Now, let's just call it money so that you don't get too confused. But you go in and you actually create a loan, or you sign for a loan, even electronically. If it's a card, you've got a credit card, still a signature, it's just an electronic version. So it's the same thing. You create that money. Your energy creates that money. It wasn't there in the first place, and banks have no money whatsoever. Okay, we've got to remember, like, Bank of England's got nothing to do with England. It's a privately owned bank, all right, for profit by a certain family. It's got nothing to do with the country. It's got nothing to do with the government. And the government actually borrow money from that bank. So that just shows how crazy this all is. So it's got absolutely nothing to do with like being federal, or, you know, like the Federal Reserve in the United States. They all think it's the federal bank of the government. It's not. It's owned by the same family as the Bank of England. So, you know, this is how serious this can get. But you can use this in your favor if you start turning the tables on the contract and agreement situation, and then realize that you're not tied to anything and you actually don't have to give anybody anything anyway. You created that money. When you actually signed for it, the bank took that money from your signature as a deposit. It's called a promissory note. Again, I don't want to get scared people too much about it, but it means that you don't owe anything to anyone. So we can actually show you how to get rid of that. Because it's a bad time of year for people when they've coming out of like the holiday period, they've overspent, and now they think, oh, I wish I'd never done that. And they let it get on top of the shoulders, and it gets them down. And then you add it on top of other worries, especially the nonsense everyone's going through, makes it worse, that compound effect. So, if we actually helped you get rid of a little bit of financial woe, just by a few little, maybe it's not call them tricks, but, like certainly methods of where you can actually stop people harassing you, and actually get rid of any complications or tie-ins with what you would have thought was debt, but it isn't. And that would certainly help people. What happens is once you get these debt collection agencies that come after people, and they're the ones that have like the big red letters that they send out to you and threatening and very aggressive and everything like that. They've actually broken the law, their law, if you want to call it that, in many different ways. But most people don't realize that, don't know that. So we can help you show every single rule, regulation, call it a law if you like, that they've broken under GDPR, Property Act 1925, and the Data Protection Act, and they've completely exposed themselves to prosecution. You've just got to know how to do it, close down all of those debts, and your debts can disappear if you know what you're doing.
Amazing. And Peter, I first got in contact with you because I've been doing some research myself, and it can get very complicated very quickly. So what I like about your approach is that you've created a community and people can access different aspects of the information. You're not there guiding people through an entire curriculum saying you've got to do all of this. What you're saying is, if you've got this specific issue, let's look at that, and I can give you the step-by-step approach so that you can unravel yourself from that. Now, if you've got another issue, because it's different depending, if you've got personal debt compared to, let's say, you're getting a charge for, a speeding fine or something like that, that's a totally different thing to look at. It's still contracts, but it's a different subject. So they can deal with one thing first and then come and have a look the information and examples of where people have used a step-by-step approach for something else, such as a charge, or it might be a certain type of tax, or I know you and I have spoke about how beneficial it can be to set up like a private trust if it's the taxations that are really getting your goat, they're really getting under your skin, how much you're paying for those types of things. And again, there's a whole re-education to happen around each aspect of this, because we've been entrained and programmed to believe that we do owe this money and we're doing the right thing, because obviously when it comes to tax, we're thinking about public services, we're thinking about, well, we need to ensure we've got healthcare and we've got access to education and all of that kind of stuff. But you use the word tricks. There's a whole lot of tricks going on behind the scenes with how those systems operate that we're not aware of, and we're not receiving what we think we're receiving from those systems with how that they're actually operating. Would you say that's true?
100%. I mean, the thing is, you think that you're paying for these services by your tax and everything like that. But again, I don't want to get too complicated, but everything's already been prepaid for, and it's been prepaid through you as well. Because if you look, which I do other talks, which would get really complicated, but explanation about, where this money comes from, because it comes from your birth, through bonds from your birth certificate that actually get invested on the stock exchange and create a huge amount of wealth. And this is where the services all get paid for. So why would you pay for it again by paying tax and all the rest of that nonsense?
Utilities and
exactly. Even on the council tax, which has got to be the biggest scam of the entire like planet, really, you know. Now we've got steps where you can actually fight that by being on the side of what they call it law, but it's not, it's statutory legislation. But we use their legislation that they created to beat them. This is the good thing. You've got to educate yourself, not only because people always say, I'm going to find out common law and protect yourself with common law. And it doesn't. There's no such thing, right? There's law. There is law. Real law comes from God, granted by God. But there's also statutory legislation, which is from the legal society. The whole world is run on the legal society if you don't know how to use law. But it's good to be able to use both sides of the sword, because they've got their statutory legislation, which is how they charge for tax, how they charge for council tax, but they're breaking their regulations all the time, never mind the law. So if you can find out the same as what we talked about, the debt, use their regulations against them, and it smashes them to pieces. They haven't got a clue how to cope with it. Once they get shown that they've actually broken their own rules and they can't reply to you when you go in on a legal basis, I'm talking legal, using their statute, you know, it completely shatters them, and there's no illusion left, and there's no fear left. Everyone's scared of the council tax, losing your house, getting put in prison. They've done it to people. Right? When the ones that should be in prison are the ones that are actually, in reality, if you find out and listen to what we teach you, they are committing treason. So, you know, treason, it's the only crime, and it is a crime, that is left in Britain that you still have the death penalty. So, you know, I'm not saying they're going to go and hang them all, but, you know, this is a power that you have if you actually can learn and educate yourselves in certain different areas. So if you do, you know, we've got a community and there's a lot of different people in there from different walks of life. I'm talking about doctors and dentists, as well as, you know, right down to anybody, teachers, laborers, everything. And they've all got different lives, but they've all got very similar issues. So, and the good thing is when they're going through things and they learn things, they also share it with other people as well and say, look, I've been successful. This is what we were taught, but we did it and it worked. And look what happened. So they help other people that come along as well. It's a very helpful, good community that we have. So you're never going to be on your own is the thing. And the biggest thing I think in this world is everybody does feel alone, don't they? So
In a lot of that, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And that's the thing, is you're not, you know, I mean, we've got a great community. We have like regular talks or live talks on YouTube and Facebook as well, where we actually put information out, but it's a community talking to each other live at the same time. It's literally like they've all met down the pub, but they're actually sitting at home, you know, so it's brilliant. Costs you less as well than going to the pub.
Yeah, true. Fantastic. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think when you have got that sense of support, it just makes the whole thing a lot less daunting, because there's one thing realizing that you've been lied to or you've been kept ignorant, you know, throughout your life purposefully by these systems. But then there's also the fact of it takes some courage that all the fears come up about implementing the actions that are available, because you think, oh, but just, you know, what if repercussions, what if, you know, you can't argue with the tax man, you can't argue with big business or big banks or whatever it is. So there's that fear of authority that's been instilled for, you know, from childhood. So I think the fact that you're talking to other people, and like you say, the very real examples, people like, oh, I've managed to squash that, cancel this, that's, you know, that's not even a problem anymore, they removed me from whatever list, or, you know, it just adds more confidence, so you've got more faith in the process for yourself. All right, so there's so much wealth of information that in what you do. I know for the summit we can't possibly go into all of it. I think if we can talk about the debt side of things purely, you know, based on what you've highlighted, that January is such a important time for when a lot of people are feeling stressed around that. So if we can do that, and then if we have got time, it'd be brilliant if we can talk about some of the information you've been sharing around private trusts and private member associations. For those who are under a lot of stress at the moment with the ongoing threats of lockdowns and whatnot, and where that affects their businesses. If they've got businesses where, you know, you yourself, you've got gyms and, you know, whatnot, you run martial art classes and that kind of stuff, don't you? So you've experienced it firsthand. So if there's any easy take home words of advice or signposts you can give people at the summit so they can leave knowing what to do next to protect themselves, that would be fantastic. So does that sound all right to you?
No, yeah, that sounds great. I mean, you know, we can definitely touch on the private trust matter. Something that I've been trying to, not push is the right word, but like, you know, really advising people and encouraging people to look at is the private trust and a power of attorney, a lasting power of attorney, which is a government side. It's nothing to do with us. We actually have to direct you to the government website to actually do the lasting power of attorney, and you have to pay the government for it. So it's a legal thing, not a lawful thing, as in we like do more on law, contract law. But, you know, it's something that's vitally important when you're looking at things that happen around this time that we're in, this situation that we are kind of finding ourselves in. So, and that helps with the private trust. Everybody should have their own private trust, and you can put anything in a private trust that could be classed as property. Not everyone understands the word property, so I can help them get to the grips of what really is property. It doesn't have to be tangible things like your house or your car. It can be other things as well, which we can explain a little bit more, you know, on the summit. And then, you know, if they get a little taste for it, delve a little bit further into it. Private trusts is the best way of protecting yourself in the private. And we also put people into the private as compared to being under acts and statutes. But then when we're going in the acts and statutes on the legal side of things, then we have to be looking at that power of attorney, the lasting power of attorney, which you have to do the paperwork through the government and pay the government for. But it gives you that extra bit of protection if you end up, say, for instance, in a hospital and you can't speak for yourself, which, you know, you could have an accident at work and you're just unconscious and you can't get your thoughts together and speak properly, and you end up in a hospital when you can't speak properly and say what you want to happen. On a lasting power of attorney, you actually put someone else, you are a donor of your power. So you donate your power to another person who you trust implicitly, who has all of the list of your needs, wants and desires, and the hospital cannot go off anything that you haven't decided you want, which does not happen if you end up there. You know, I'm not going to give any stories away, but I'm sure that everybody's heard of certain things that have happened when people have went into hospital that has been horrific. So, you know, this is something that we can advise you on where to go and how to actually set this up with the government as well.
Wow, thank you. And I've got to thank you for how generous you are with the information that you share, because I've seen you do this on the lives that you do with your audience members and community members. I'm also part of your sort of private members community, so I get a chance to see that side. And you're always so willing to just explain things so that people really know what to do and how, you know, the benefits for them, so they don't miss the opportunity. That's what's important, I think. So thank you for that. I've kept you longer than I promised I would. So I'm going to say thank you for the introduction, Peter. I will be getting this out and we'll be sharing it with our Facebook community, and we'll send it out by email and whatnot. Do you want a copy of the link so you can share with your audience as well?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, no, we'll send it out to everybody. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. And I'll see you on Saturday, if not before, if we don't speak before then. All right.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Peter. Bye.
Thank you.